Dzień dobry Państwu, jak co tydzień witam w programie Onet Opinie. Dzisiaj mam specjalnego gościa. Dzisiaj moim gościem jest Jack Barsky, autor tejże książki, która właśnie się ukazuje w Polsce. Był oficer wywiadu KGB, śpioch, człowiek, który przez wiele lat pracował w Stanach Zjednoczonych jako ukryty szpieg radzieckiego wywiadu. Potem przeszedł na drugą stronę. Do dzisiaj mieszka w Stanach Zjednoczonych z zalegalizowanym już pobytem. Thank you so much, sir, for coming here and for accepting the invitation. Thank you for the book. It's very on time. It's very current events now.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when you followed the news, what happened in the United Kingdom, the attack on the former Soviet intelligence officer, and the answer of the Western countries, expanding the Russian diplomats from 18 European countries? Were you surprised?
When you live a life full of surprises, as I did, nothing much surprises you. So the short answer is not really. This kind of stuff happens all the time, and unfortunately, what I see now that the tensions, international tensions, are rising, and we have to be really, really careful not to get to a point where we lose control over this stuff.
You were sent to the U.S. in the 70s.
Right.
You were born in East Germany.
Right.
You are German.
Yes.
You are a U.S. citizen, obviously now,
Right.
but you are German by birth. You were sent to pretend to someone else. Jack Barsky is
Right.
not the name you were born with.
No.
Why did you decide stop working for the Soviet intelligence? What happened? Did you stop believing in the Soviet cause, or what happened?
You know, sometimes I don't even believe it myself, but there's no getting around it. It's the biggest love story that happened in my life, and it had nothing to do with another woman, and I was in love with an 18-year-old girl, little girl. She's now 30 and she's gorgeous, and I was lucky to be able to stay with her and raise her to the wonderful person she is now.
But there are many other people who are still working for the Soviet intelligence. We just witnessed a few years ago when the American government was expelling 10 spies, just
Right.
like you, just like yourself. Yeah, 5 couples who pretended to be Americans or British or Canadians. Do you believe that the Soviet intelligence is still keeping spies like this in the West?
Well, it's not Soviet, it's Russian.
It's Russian,
Do
yeah.
I believe if they can, they will. It is very difficult, and the behavior of those 5 couples, to the extent it's known, there's a little clip on the internet. The FBI shared some surveillance videos, and I watched this thing and I says, "Oh my God, this is a mistake! Don't do that." They were not well trained, and apparently didn't do much damage of any kind. They were just hanging out. So I'm wondering, you know, if the Russians haven't decided to stop this. It requires a lot of resources, and it hasn't gotten a lot of payback. That doesn't mean that they don't try it again. They tried. The Soviets tried it several times, and none of those efforts were those waves. There were 3 waves of illegals that they had planned. None of them, according to somebody who knew, that the guy who smuggled out all that information, who was an archivist at the headquarters of the KGB, Vasily Mitrokhin, none of them were successful. But you know, if you can, you will.
You look at the state of the Russian intelligence today. Do you think that after the 90s, when, as the whole country, the Russian intelligence was weak, do you believe that they're strong again? Do they go back to the levels from the Soviet times, from the Cold War?
What I believe is not important, but what my still existing FBI contacts telling me that clearly their efforts have been increasing, that's for sure. Are they as strong as they used to be? Russia is not as strong as the Soviet Union was, and I don't know if they have the same resources, but they have something that the Soviet Union didn't have. There's a lot better knowledge of the West and how the West operates, and that makes it easier for you to actually gather intelligence.
Your case was very special because you were not born Soviet, you are not Russian.
Right.
You were East German,
Right.
used by the Soviet intelligence. Do you know about other cases of people who were not Russians but were used as illegals by the Soviet intelligence?
Surprisingly, a month ago I would have said no, but I met somebody in Berlin. The meeting was arranged by the Berlin Spy Museum, who was sort of a clone of me. He went to the United States 5 years after I got there with his wife, and he lived in Astoria, Queens, and I lived next door in Woodside. It was clearly, I mean, we were almost within walking distance.
Probably passing each other from time
It's
to
a
time.
possibility. Now, the difference between him and me is, he had a wife with him, and he's small. He disappears when I enter a room. I'm noticeable, and the other thing is he didn't have any real task other than just embed yourself in society. And so I'm going to meet him again, and it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm. So all the people that you met from the Soviet intelligence in the U.S. were Soviets.
All the others were, yes, and they, all of them with, yes, all this is, I got to be careful, take back. I also met with an American couple that took part in the theft of the atomic secret, Morris and Lana Cohen. I worked with them for a little bit, but all the other ones, the ones that trained me and that worked with me, they were all Russians. They were employees. I wasn't. I was sort of like a contractor.
It's surprising that the Soviet intelligence let you go so easily, because you just stopped working for them and they just tried to push you a few times to go back to the Soviet Union, and then they just gave up. Why do you think it happened like that? They
gave up because I fed them the grand lie that they had no reason not to believe that lie. Here's how this. I told them that I had HIV AIDS because I didn't want to leave this little girl, and so put yourself in the shoes of my handlers. They get this information. They knew about my life in the East, and they knew about my life in America.
And it's end of the 80s, right? This is
88.
This is the story you're telling.
Yes.
At the end of the 80s. Yes.
At that time, I had a family in Germany. They didn't know that I had a family in the United States. I had a better car there than I had in the U.S. I had a better flat there. I had $60,000 in savings. I had just received the second highest award of the Soviet Union, the Order of the Red Banner, and they had promised me a house. Why would I lie, make up this dumb story to not take advantage of that and come home as a hero? They clearly wanted me back, and they were concerned about me because I have proof now, because when I asked them to give my savings to my German family, they went there and told them that I died and gave them some money. So they believed it, and it makes sense. The decision that they made was based on what they knew about me.
So, because you had two families, one in the U.S. and one in the East Germany.
Right.
So the German family, they told them that you died.
Yes, that's right.
A hero, probably.
No, I just died. Not a hero. I had this bad disease.
Okay. So did they receive the money that you had?
I don't know how
Germany?
much. They received some money for sure. I don't know if the entire 60,000. That's not known to me.
But then, so then they let you go. But obviously they know you're alive.
They know that I'm alive.
They follow your life, obviously.
Well, of course you'd be interested. If you work in intelligence, you follow those stories.
Then the few years go by. It's the middle of the 90s. The FBI shows up.
Yeah.
And because of Mr. Mitrokhin, who you mentioned, who brought your name to them,
right,
because he took some files from the KGB archives, and the name Barsky was in the archives.
That's correct.
So they found you, the FBI found you.
Mm-hmm.
They come to you and they say, "We know you're a spy."
Yeah.
And what happens then? How do they let you? How both FBI and the KGB and the Russian intelligence back then let you go?
Well, first of all, I may want to correct something. I don't know when the KGB figured out that I was still alive. I don't think they checked on me. They had other things to worry about.
Okay.
When I came out in public, that was only 3 years ago. Then it was clear. But so the FBI, they knew about me, but they didn't have a clue whether I was still active or I was a sleeper. So when they caught me, they
had to assume you were still active.
They observed me long enough to figure that I'm probably not active.
Okay.
It was a 4-year long investigation, and they found no clue that I was still possibly a sleeper, so they were concerned. But they knew that I had 2 children and that I had a strong relationship with the children, so they figured I would cooperate, and that was a good guess. I cooperated fully to the extent I could possibly cooperate. I told them everything that I could possibly remember. It was 6 weeks every night. They probably had notes this thick about me.
Mm-hmm. So the FBI shows up one day. They basically arrest you.
No. Didn't. They detained me. They didn't arrest
they
me.
They detain you. Okay, that's a legal term, but
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah, they detain you. You start to cooperate with them.
Right.
Then the years go by. Even if the Russian intelligence doesn't know that you're cooperating with the FBI,
Right.
the 3 years ago you become a public figure in the U.S. So they know by then.
Yeah.
Obviously.
No.
At the latest, they know
No.
by 2015 that you cooperate with them. Then Mr. Litvinenko dies in the UK. Then lately Mr. Skripal is attacked in the UK as well. Both former intelligence officers. Aren't you? I know this is the question that you get asked all the time.
I get this question all the time.
But this is an obvious question, and I have to ask it. Aren't you afraid?
Well, and I give this is a well thought out answer, and I'm not making this up every time. Normally, I'm usually speaking off the cuff, but this answer I thought it through. Of course, I'm concerned, but I can't live the rest of my life in fear. There is some good reason why my case is a little different. My case is older. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a Russian, so I wasn't employed.
Does it make a difference for them that you're not
I don't
Russian?
know. You know, one can guess, and you know, you never know. You know, there could also be some. It may not be that the organization is coming after you, but some rogue intelligence. You know, intelligence officers have a lot of leeway sometimes, and they may want to try something. I can't live with that fear.
But do you believe that Mr. Litvinenko and Mr. Skripal were attacked because these were Kremlin orders, or was it an operations by rogue intelligence officers?
I doubt very much that Vladimir Putin gave the command to go after these guys. Mm-hmm. There's something called plausible deniability. Mm-hmm. There's something called where people think they would please their boss by doing something on their own. And when people in the United States, politicians say, well, that was definitely Putin, what do they know? What did we have an agent in the Kremlin when he said that? There's a lot of speculation and a lot of nonsense in the public realm about a world that most people don't know very little about. Mm-hmm. So right now, you know probably in as much as I do, and it's all based on speculation and reasoning, and you can reason both sides, and honestly, I have no clue. And the case, you can make a case that this doesn't make any sense from Putin's point of view, or whoever. It could be a rogue agent, or it could be that Skripal had something to do with some other shady characters. Mm-hmm. This poison could have been stolen and come into the hands of somebody else.
When it comes to the American legal system, there's something called pattern that is very important to prosecutors when they persecute a case. And we know that there's a long history of killings by the Soviet intelligence, among other, and especially by using poison and strange stuff.
But
like
that's corroboration. That's not proof. You cannot convict somebody based on just pattern. You must know that you must have proof. And the pattern is not consistent. There were other incidents where people were thrown over a balcony or died in accidents. There was an ex-head of the KGB who died because he found himself in front of a train. Yeah. So be careful when we focus on just the poisoning. There were other things. They were maybe not as I mean, I'm lacking a word now, but as in the limelight. Mm-hmm. But there was a historic pattern for sure by the KGB to go aggressively after their defectors. Mm-hmm. And it's not, over time it has lessened. They would chase after people and would try to kill him. I was involved personally in finding an old defector, Nikolai Koklov,
very famous.
who
Who
lived.
was a killer himself.
Yes,
Yeah.
he lived in the United States and died of natural death. But they asked me to find him. I found him, and many years later, I realized that I had given them the address of somebody they probably were going after, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So there was some restraint, and I would think that this aggression is not as strong as it used to be. Does it still exist? I don't know.
Thank you so much for the visit.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that this is a fascinating story, especially since it's not about a Russian, but it's about a German who worked for the Soviet intelligence. W głębokiej konspiracji. Bardzo Państwu polecam tą książkę. Proszę przeczytać, bo w dzisiejszych czasach naprawdę jest ważną książką i naprawdę, jak się okazuje, opowiada nie o historii, tylko w dużym stopniu o współczesności. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
A my się widzimy za tydzień. Do zobaczenia.
And you